Alison Victoria's rise on HGTV once looked like the perfect modern success story. She was bold, confident, and unmistakably talented, transforming historic Chicago homes into multi-million-dollar showpieces while millions watched. To viewers, she embodied control, creativity, and ambition. But behind the polished edits and dramatic reveals, a very different reality was quietly unraveling. What began as a dream partnership and a breakout television hit slowly turned into a nightmare of lawsuits, financial losses, public scrutiny, and emotional collapse. Alison did not simply face professional setbacks. She was pulled into a storm that threatened her career, reputation, and sense of self. The years that followed forced her to confront betrayal, grief, and the cost of trust in a high-stakes industry built on image. This is not a story about gossip or exaggeration, but about how quickly success can fracture and how rebuilding requires far more strength than rising ever did. A Star is Born on HGTV. When Windy City Rehab premiered in early 2019, Alison Victoria became one of HGTV's most recognizable faces almost overnight. Her fearless design style, love for historic architecture, and confident on-camera presence resonated immediately with audiences. Paired with contractor Donovan Ehart, the show promised a compelling mix of creativity and construction, turning neglected Chicago properties into luxurious homes. The chemistry between the two appeared natural, even playful, reinforcing the idea of a strong professional partnership. For viewers, it felt authentic, aspirational, and fresh. Behind the scenes, Alison was not just the designer, but also a co-producer, deeply invested in every outcome. The show's early success brought sponsorships, brand deals, and a rapid expansion of projects. Yet, that fast growth masked serious structural problems. The pace was relentless, and oversight increasingly fragmented. While Alison focused on design and storytelling, the construction side quietly drifted into dangerous territory. What looked like a well-oiled machine on television was already developing cracks that would soon become impossible to hide. The violations that changed everything. Only months after the show's debut, reality intruded harshly. The Chicago Department of Buildings revealed that Donovan Ehart's company, Graymark Development Group, had conducted extensive construction work without proper permits across multiple projects. Stop work orders multiplied, and inspectors cited unsafe conditions that endangered workers and residents. Entire renovations were halted mid-build. For the city, it was a matter of public safety. For Alison, it was a shocking revelation. She maintained that she had no prior knowledge of the violations, insisting that compliance and permitting fell outside her design role. Still, as a public face and shareholder, she was inevitably pulled into the fallout. Media coverage intensified, and what had been a glamorous renovation show suddenly became associated with negligence and risk. The narrative shifted fast. Viewers who once admired the transformations began questioning the integrity behind them. The situation exposed a harsh truth about shared ventures. When one pillar collapses, everyone standing nearby feels the impact, regardless of fault. On-screen cracks and off-screen panic. Season 2 of Windy City Rehab captured a dramatically different tone. Instead of playful banter and triumphant reveals, audiences witnessed mounting tension, confusion, and emotional strain. Alison confronted Donovan repeatedly on camera, demanding clarity about finances, permits, and stalled projects. Her frustration was raw and unscripted. Scenes showed her crying on construction sites, visibly overwhelmed as legal threats and financial uncertainty closed in. What made these moments resonate was their authenticity. This was no longer polished reality television. It was a woman losing control of a situation she once believed she could manage. Off camera, the pressure was even heavier. lawyers, inspectors, and investors crowded in. Alison found herself questioning decisions, partnerships, and her own judgment. The show inadvertently documented a professional unraveling in real time. For many viewers, sympathy replaced admiration. The cracks weren't just structural, they were deeply personal, revealing the emotional toll of carrying responsibility without authority. Lawsuits and the cost of accountability. The legal consequences were devastating. Homeowners who purchased renovated properties began filing lawsuits, citing leaks, structural failures, electrical hazards, and declining property values. One of the most prominent cases involved a $1.36 million home whose defects surfaced almost immediately after purchase. Although Alison argued she was dragged into litigation due to her ownership stake rather than direct responsibility, the damage was done. Determined to protect her reputation, she made a staggering decision. She paid nearly $700,000 out of her own pocket to fix problems tied to her former partner's work. Over time, multiple lawsuits piled up, involving clients and investors alike. Each case drained not only money, but emotional energy. Alison later admitted she lost nearly everything she had built over 15 years. The settlements, some confidential, closed the legal chapter, but left lasting scars. Accountability came at a personal cost that few television success stories ever show. The partnership collapse and public fallout. The professional breakup between Alison Victoria and Donovan Ehart was inevitable. Trust had eroded, communication collapsed, and legal exposure made continued collaboration impossible. But the split didn't end the conflict. In 2021, Ehart filed a defamation lawsuit against Discovery and the production company, claiming he was edited into a villain while Alison was portrayed as a victim. He argued that scenes were manipulated and that he was contractually silenced while public opinion turned against him. The lawsuit reignited public debate and kept the controversy alive. Courts ultimately dismissed the case, citing insufficient evidence of malicious intent. For Alison, the silence was strategic. She did not publicly engage, allowing the legal process to speak for itself. Yet even without direct involvement, the prolonged dispute kept her name tied to scandal. There were no winners. One reputation was shattered, the other deeply bruised. The show survived, but the partnership that built it was beyond repair. Starting over from the rubble, after years of chaos, Alison chose reinvention over retreat. Season 3 of Windy City Rehab marked a clear shift. She abandoned real estate investment entirely, focusing instead on direct client design projects. No shared ownership, no speculative flips, no permanent contractor partner. The new format reduced risk and restored control. Behind the scenes, Alison also faced harsh financial realities. To stabilise her life, she sold her Bucktown warehouse home, once showcased as her dream property. Letting go of that space symbolised more than money. It marked emotional closure. Around the same time, she suffered a deeply personal loss with the death of her father in early 2021. Grief compounded exhaustion, forcing her to reassess priorities. She slowed down, reduced her workload, and allowed herself to be human rather than indestructible. Rebuilding wasn't flashy, it was quiet, deliberate, and grounded in lessons painfully learned. From TV star to entrepreneur. Rather than relying solely on television, Alison pivoted toward entrepreneurship. In 2024, she launched her independent design studio, reclaiming full control over branding, contracts, and creative direction. The shift reflected maturity born from experience. Projects were carefully selected, budgets transparent, and liability clearly defined. Television appearances continued, but with a new purpose. Shows like Rock the Block and Battle on the Beach highlighted her expertise rather than her personal life. She no longer needed drama to remain relevant. Financial restructuring followed. The sale of major assets allowed her to reduce debt and reinvest strategically. Offices in Chicago and Las Vegas supported a more flexible, scalable business model. Alison was no longer chasing exposure. She was building sustainability. The transformation marked a return to her core identity, not as a reality star, but as a designer and businesswoman who learned the hard way how fragile success can be. Healing beyond the spotlight. Personal healing became just as important as professional repair. After years of silence, Alison cautiously shared parts of her emotional journey, acknowledging anxiety, insomnia, and burnout. She stopped pretending resilience meant invulnerability. In 2023, she went public with a new relationship, signaling stability rather than spectacle. Her partner existed outside the television and construction worlds, offering distance from past chaos. Alison also embraced boundaries, choosing privacy where once she overshared. Selling her dream home, reducing her workload, and stepping back from constant visibility reflected a deeper shift. She no longer felt the need to prove success through possessions or appearances. Instead, she allowed her actions to speak quietly. Healing wasn't linear, but it was intentional. By prioritizing mental health and balance, Alison reclaimed agency over her narrative, something she had lost during the height of the scandal. Redefining success. After the storm. Alison Victoria's story is no longer about downfall, but about recalibration. She did not emerge untouched. The losses were real and lasting, yet she refused to be defined by failure or controversy. Today, her career is steadier, her projects more controlled, and her public image more authentic. She operates with caution, wisdom, and boundaries forged through experience. What once looked like a glamorous shortcut to success now stands as a warning about trust, oversight, and the cost of unchecked growth. Alison's journey reveals that rebuilding is not about returning to where you were, but about choosing where you want to stand next. Her story resonates not because it is dramatic, but because it is human. Behind the halo of television fame was a woman who fell hard, stood back up, and chose to rebuild on her own terms.